because we use this for the cloud. Boom. Now it's time to get started. So without further ado, Holly Barrett, the floor is yours, and I'm going to make you co-host.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for having me. So I'll just just to give myself a little more credibility, but thank you for the intro. So full disclosure, I am a newer agent. I officially became a realtor in December of last year. But I started as an investor in 2015. We've since bought and or sold 7 properties. We currently have a portfolio of 1 long-term rental, 3 short-term rentals, and 1 commercial rental, light industrial. And and so our goal, actually, we will be adding more short-term rentals. We're transitioning away from long-term over to short-term, 3xing our cash flow. Pretty excited about that. My goal is to get maybe 1 to 2 doors by the end of this year of short-term rentals. So my investing experience predates my realtor experience, but I became a realtor primarily because my background was in sales. I am a mom of 2 little ones, so it kind of made sense as a transition because I was already just so knee deep in real estate from an investor standpoint. And I really struggled finding investor-friendly realtors across the country when I was looking for properties all over the place. So yeah, I felt like there was a real gap in the market. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. I still feel that way. And I don't know why, but I wanted to start with, well, I kind of do know why. Investors, it is a niche, and it is a kind of a different world, and it a little bit of a different skill set to think through some of these the items that the investor clients are looking for. But I wanted to start with why work with investors at all. Why is it a worthwhile niche? So the first reason I would say is it's not an emotional transaction. So I have now worked with both more investors than I have, I call them regular, I don't know what you call primary residences transactions. And I don't enjoy those as much. I feel like I'm a counselor, quite frankly. And it's way more stressful to me. Investor clients are, it's not an emotional transaction. Now, for the first time investors, it can be a lot more hand-holding, and they get real trigger shy. So there's a little bit more counseling, so to speak, for the newbies. But most of the time, it's all about the numbers. And if you can help them make their numbers make sense, then it's a real easy situation. It's pretty easy situation. So I like that it's just it's not an emotional transaction. The second reason was there's not as much competition. I feel my 2 cents. I mean, I look around, I talk to a lot of newer agents, especially, that are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're not having a fun time. They're generalizing. And I think that they should be niching really quick. I think if you niche, you can carve out a clear path for marketing, for branding, for your education. It's a much clearer path forward. And just to give a shout out to, she was on here, let me see, Jessica Baskis, she's on here. She has a podcast. I'm blanking on the name of the pod, Real Estate by Real Estate. Go check out one of her, if you're interested in niching, not to get too off on that topic, but she has a really good short and sweet episode. It's one of the first episodes on her podcast. It's about niching, and she goes through many different niches that you could pick. And it's a really good podcast episode to listen to, like why you really should niche and not be afraid of it. Because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, we don't want to turn off other types of clients. That's not the reality. It doesn't turn away clients. I promise you. It will help boost your clients. It just carves an expertise for you, and people like experts. People like to see experts. So So again, back to, it's just not as much competition. You don't have to fight for the business as much. I'm telling you, I'm here in Atlanta. This is a huge market. The marketing platform, and I'll get to that I use, I think I'm the only, if not, there might be one other female realtor who is a premium member on this platform. I don't have that much competition. It's kind of crazy to me. And I don't even, anyway, we'll get to that in a second, but there's not as much competition. That's, I assure you that. Repeat clients. I just went through my second, we didn't go through with it, but I was under contract on a second transaction since February or March with the same buyer. So these are repeat clients. If you nurture them, I've already had several referrals from my clients. I mean, they like to make money. So if you help them make money, they're going to love you. They will be clients for life. They don't care about, cutesy gifts, although I do give them gifts, but honestly, they don't care about that. They care about, do you help bring them deals that make them money, and they will love you for life. Referrals to other agents. So this is a big one, especially with EXP as an agent attraction approach. And so referrals to other agents. So investors, most of my clients are out of state, some are local, but many are out of state. And one of the questions I always ask them on the initial buyers meeting is, what other markets are you interested in? And so I ask them, hey, I let them know this is part of my core competency really that I offer them is, hey, within EXP and even out of EXP, I am a part of investor groups for realtors. And so I have an extensive network of other investor-friendly agents. I know how hard it is to find investor-friendly agents. So let me help you make that easier for you. So if you are looking at other markets, hey, do you want me to hook you up with an agent in Memphis? They always say yes, always, like always. Even the ones who have agents, they're usually not that happy, quite honest. I mean, telling you, it's so hard to find investor-friendly agents. I can't even express that enough. So that's a great recruitment tool, or agent attraction, whatever you want to call it. I mean, people love to get referrals. So it's just a great way to spread the love. Also, even within Georgia, I can't drive everywhere and anywhere. And so there is a little, and we can kind of get into this later, but there is some logistics that are, there's a little bit of a logistical difference here. It takes some finesse, but I really leverage my investor realtor network throughout Georgia also to share the love. But I always want to QB the operation. So anyway, that might be getting too down the weeds on that, but if y'all want to ask me about the referral thing, feel free later. So I just want to kind of high level some of these. But should I answer questions as we go, or how about we do this? Let's pause for a moment. Any questions about working with investors? Why bother to work with investors? Any feedback on that or questions?
Wow. That's good. That means you were very clear and concise.
So,
no, I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How easy is it to maneuver to get paid?
How easy is it to maneuver?
To maneuver to get paid when you're working with investors, because you have to add their. Go ahead.
Elaborate on that. I'm not sure I understand the question.
So when you're working with investors, how are you getting paid? How easy is it for you to get whatever amount of money that you want off that transaction? So if it might not be 3%, you might say you want a flat $5,000, just depending on how much the deal is. How easy is it for you to negotiate to get that amount of money out of that deal?
Are you referring to situations when they are not on the MLS, like working with
right? Like off-market properties.
Honestly, I know realtors that work with wholesalers. I'm not a big fan. I stay away from it. And so I do non-exclusives. I only do non-exclusive agreements. I don't want to lock them in. I started with exclusives. Honestly, it gets really chaotic and it's a pain in the ass for me on the back end, like for administrative purposes. So stick with non-exclusive agreements. In Georgia, we have to have agreements, by the way. So it's a little different than in Florida, where a lot of you guys are. But yeah, to get paid, it's just like, I mean, there's no difference. There's zero difference. I mean, even if they wanted me to work a wholesale deal or, you know, for sale by owner off market. I mean, I have worked one off market, but it was still pretty generic. I mean, you can just negotiate that with your buyer. Just have that conversation offline. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's what I've been doing, but I thought it might be something different. Okay. Thank you.
And then we have a question in the chat from Suzanne about finding investors, but I believe that's your next topic, correct? Okay. Yeah. So Suzanne, we're going to go into that in just a little bit. And then I see TJ, Delania, and then Steph in that order. So TJ.
Hey, Holly.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you do a lot of vacation rentals up there in Atlanta, Georgia area? Because like we know in Florida, there's a lot of vacation rentals. And if you do your investors usually ask you for ROI sheets as far as return on investment spreadsheets, calculating what kind of profit they're going to make against the purchase price and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of on the listing agent. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and create that for them. Like, that's really on listing agent. I mean, I'll help with the numbers, but honestly, doing something like an ROI Excel spreadsheet, that's really something that the seller should be providing. But yeah, for sure, they ask for numbers all the time. And do I work with short-term rentals? Yes, I get more calls for North Georgia, so I kind of leverage a referral network across North Georgia to help with that. Atlanta proper, surprisingly, I don't get as much, which I feel like I should, because Atlanta is actually a pretty good market for that. And they have some really interesting opportunities with ADUs, adding ADUs to the back of some of these properties. So anyway, it's kind of an evolving thing, and I'm watching what's happening. A lot of the short-term rental expertise, you know, it's one of those things, it's district by district. And I need to sit down and really dive in to like every district, because I want to be the short-term rental, you know, go-to person, but I need to sit down and actually like do some homework. And it takes some work, really. It takes some legwork, understanding all the ordinances on that. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks.
Good morning, Holly. Okay, so I have a question, and this is kind of what turned me off about investors. How do you deal with the investors who are constantly trying to shortchange you on your commission? Like, I've had investors tell me, well, this is a $1 million deal. I need you to take 1% so I can use the other percentages to help me make my numbers.
Tell them, why don't you go get a real estate license and leave me out of it altogether? No, that's not work. Yeah, that's a douchey. No, I wouldn't work with them. I've never had anyone ask me that. I've had like, okay, so again, I've started in December. I really started hitting it hard in February, or yeah, like late January, February. I've run, it looks like about 30 virtual meetings. I need to track how many of those were turned into clients, but out of that, I've had a healthy number of clients. I've never had anyone ask to cut the commission. So that's not someone you want to work with. Yeah.
And Steph.
First of all, Holly, I'm so proud of you, girl. Good job.
Thanks.
I'm a hot mess. I haven't brushed my hair yet today, and it's super short. So, but anyways, what I wanted to comment on in regards to someone asked about the payment how to make sure that you get paid. Don't you do all of your closings and everything through title? So title handles that?
Not in Georgia. We use attorneys.
Oh, kind of the same thing though, right? Because that's what's no?
What do you mean?
So they hold the money. Mm-hmm. They give the money once it's closed. Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally zero difference between working. I think she was alluding more to off-market deals and wholesaling situations, which do get a little bit, I mean, it's still a similar closing process, really, but on my opinion, there's too many cooks in that kitchen. I'd rather not work it. That's just my opinion. And I'm not a big fan of the wholesaling world, to be honest with you. I'm on wholesaling lists. I don't know. I mean, occasionally that looks like a good deal, but then when you dig in, there's always something that makes it not a good deal. I've just never been a fan. And even as an investor, I've never bought a wholesale deal.
There's a lot of people that are really, really off on the high end with that, but I haven't given it any time. Does anybody else know about the wholesaling thing or has experience in that area?
I don't want to get too off topic. I will tell you the wholesaling thing will take us down a rabbit hole. It is it can be kind of convoluted. I've been on calls. I've tried to wrap my head around it myself directly with the wholesalers. And I mean, if anyone wants to chime in, that's fine. But that's like honestly probably a whole call to itself, the wholesaling.
Yeah, EXP brokerage in particular does not allow for wholesaling at this time.
We're not allowed to wholesale, but we can work with a wholesaler.
Right.
Hey, Holly.
Yes.
Hey, it's TJ again. Just a quick follow-up question. I'm not sure if you referenced to this earlier or not. So as an agent, you primarily work with investor buyers, or do you do sellers as well, or split?
I mean, so it's just been, well, yeah, so far it's just been buyers, but I mean, I can sell them too. Yeah. So far I've just been, I'm not big on the flipping. I have a couple people that I refer to for flipping. It's not as fun to me. I don't know. I probably should be into it more because I know you get kind of double dip, but that's not really my forte. So, but okay, let's move on. I think we covered pretty well why to work with investors. But okay, so marketing. So how do I market? I literally have not cold called once since I started as a realtor. I'm not against it. I'm not against, the tried and true methods of getting business. I have my own personal goals and they may or may not match yours. So for my goals, what I do is working and it's more than sufficient. And so, I'm not opposed to doing any cold calling, but for now I haven't had to meet my goals. And literally all I do is bigger pockets. So if any of you guys are interested in investing, interested in being an investor agent, you have to be on bigger pockets. No question. Everyone who, pretty much everybody that wants to be an investor that's a newbie and is, let's say, in a younger demographic is on there. So you got to be on bigger pockets. It's just not an option. You have to be on bigger pockets. You got to start listening to the podcast. Go on Rookie Podcast. I would start there because it's more kind of bite-sized pieces. You'll start to pick up on the lingo. So that'll really help with the education piece and just understanding the way that they're thinking, because it is largely a bigger pockets crowd. You will still get those, more there's still like non-newbies on there. So I don't want to cast it as just this whole newbie thing, but you'll get a wide variety of investors, honestly. But I only use bigger pockets. So I'm a premium member on there. Basically, all that means is I have a kind of like a profile that has a profile for my realtor business, and you can actually submit a lead. So it's a little more, polished of a lead, so to speak. But really the best way to get leads off bigger pockets is by being active on the forums. That's the number one way. Even if you don't become a premium member and you literally just go on there as a freebie, user, and you just build out your profile. So just look on my profile and, kind of copy it and do it your own way. But Cher Ross is another one. Check out her profile. She's really active on bigger pockets. But get on bigger pockets, create your profile, and get active on the forums. And if you want a little more coaching on that, just call me offline. I'm happy to walk you through and we can do a screen share. I don't mind doing that because there's some cool little triggers you can do to get reminded when basically I have triggers set up where if someone's talking about investing in, you know, Atlanta, for example, it'll send me an alert. So there's some cool triggers you can do to kind of hop on that forum and just come from a place of contribution. And it's crazy. Like the more active I am on there, the more leads I get, not a question. Like when I find myself kind of slacking on that, I don't get as many leads. That's a part of my cadence. Like that's literally my only prospecting I do. It's on my calendar. Instead of me doing cold calls or whatever, you know, other marketing avenues there are, like that's my marketing, is go talk on forums, which to me, that's so fun. So it's not even, you know, it's a fun way to market. And that brings me to the other point of like, don't do this if it doesn't sound fun. Like if investing sounds like a drag, don't pick this as I mean, you will hate it. Like, don't just do it because, oh, Holly said that they're non-emotional transactions. That sounds fun. No, like you actually have to want to do it. Like people will read through. I get excited. Like I get pumped. You know, it's energy giving to me to talk about investing, to help. I love to help newbie investors. That is a kind of a sweet spot for me because I love it. Like it's so cool to think about helping them on this journey of financial freedom. I mean, it's really cool. So anyway, I got off on a tangent, but bigger pockets, you got to get on bigger pockets. And then of course, networking. I don't go to any physical networking yet because I'm still kind of freaked out with COVID, honestly, and I have babies. So, you know, I'm freaked out. So I don't go to anything yet, but I am on a lot of Facebook groups for investors, especially short-term rental space. So I'm pretty active there, but my only social media that I really care about, because I kind of hate social media, but anyway, I do it because I have to. But my only one that I actually really enjoy and I'm kind of addicted to is Clubhouse. So I love Clubhouse. If you want to learn about something specific, you got to get on Clubhouse, man. It's awesome and great networking potential. So I have a group on there. Encourage you guys to join it. Please do. It's called Investor Agents. So basically, if you aren't familiar with Clubhouse, get on your phone, look for the app. It's an app. You download Clubhouse app. If you still need an invitation, let me know and I'll send you an invite. Or I think if I invite you to my club, it maybe circumvents that. So just let me know if you need an invite. But my club is Investor Agents. It's for realtors who want to invest or focus on investors as a niche. And it's basically a place where we talk once a week about different topics in the investors world. And it's really meant to be a place for referrals. So yeah, please join my club. Any questions about marketing?
No, Holly, but people have asked for your number. Is it okay if I drop it into the chat?
Yeah, totally.
Thanks. There's her number.
Marketing questions going once, twice?
No, looks like it. So it's bigger pockets and forums, putting yourself into those conversations, coming from contribution, helping out the investors.
Yep, bingo. All right, so next category is education. So, and I know actually Cher and Saperstein, I know they do some education stuff. I know that they did an in-person kind of class, so to speak, on investor lingo, because there is lingo involved here. And again, you'll learn it by osmosis, but I'm just going to hit on some of the high level stuff, just so you know, because if you know the lingo, like that's half the battle. They just want someone that will speak their language. So there's a little bit of a different, language to learn. Some of the lingos that I wrote down would be, and again, just listen to the Bigger Pockets Rookie podcast and you'll just learn it. But burr is a common, so I'm just gonna write them in here actually so people can see. So burr, you'll hear people say burr a lot. It means buy, rehab, rent, refi, repeat. And basically it's a strategy that people use to essentially get the self-financing wheels turning to continue to build their portfolio. So you buy a property that's probably needs some love. You rehab the property, and then you rent it, and then you go back to the bank. So let's say you took out a direct, like a short-term loan, let's just say, or you did it cash, you can do that. But when you refinance it, you go back to a lender and you say, look, here is my property. Could you reappraise it and tell me what it's worth now that I have done this rehab? Here are the comps. Here's the market rent now. And then they will appraise it and they will give you money, you know, let's say 70% or whatever off of the newly appraised value. Now you take the money off the top, you pay yourself back, you take the money off the top, boop, you pocket it, you move it over to a new project, repeat. So hopefully that makes sense. That's one you'll hear a lot. That's a pretty common strategy, BRRRR. And STR equals short-term rental. Pretty basic, but a lot of agents do not know what I mean when I say STR. So know that. STR, short-term rental. LTR, long-term rental. 1% rule. Okay, so so another thing that you'd really want to do if you want to invest or you want to work with investors, on Bigger Pockets, there is a calculator. You really want to start practicing that with using that calculator. You don't have to run the numbers for your clients. That will take up too much of your time, but you kind of want to understand what goes into it, just to wrap your head around what they're kind of looking at and how they look at it. So I would definitely encourage you to practice using a calculator on Bigger Pockets, and there's classes on there, video tutorials and whatnot you can learn. But the 1% rule is something you'll hear a lot. It's kind of a, you know, just quick and dirty way of running numbers that kind of gives you an idea of whether it's a good deal. So for example, if it's a $100,000 property and you want to go for the 1% rule, you really want to yield $1,000 market rent. Now, that's probably, I mean, you'll learn all this, but that's probably going to yield you maybe about $100 a month in cash flow, which for a lot of people isn't really what they're looking for. I was always looking for my long-term rentals, $200 a month. So I kind of knew in my head the 1% rule was a good gauge, but I knew I needed more. So like maybe for 100,000, I, wanted to see $1,200 a month rent. So you kind of can start to learn that stuff and go to these properties pretty quick if you kind of have an idea of market rent. And then you can, let's say your client wants 1% rule. Well, then now you're sending them things that fit the 1% rule instead of you sending them something that's $100,000 but rents for, $500. And they're like, well, why'd you send me that? I told you the 1% rule. So you want to know the 1% rule. Flipping, if you want to focus on flipping, then that's definitely its own set of, flipping is honestly a niche within the niche. Flipping, all of these are really niches within the niches. For me, it does take its own kind of set of knowledge base. So you want to learn about flipping if that's of interest to you. ADU equals accessory dwelling unit. Sometimes you hear additional dwelling unit, I think too, but ADU, this is a really hot topic right now. A lot of big cities are changing their ordinances as we speak to allow for ADUs in certain zones. And basically what this is, some people think it really will help with the housing crisis because we have such a housing shortage for rentals as well. So a lot of the bigger cities are allowing ADUs. Now that's a huge, basically what an ADU is, it can be a lot of things. It could be a garage apartment. It could be like a tiny home in the backyard. It could be a lot of different things, but it could be a rental. So maybe it could even be a short-term rental. So knowing what your local city ordinance is in regards to ADUs is really helpful because it's a hot topic right now. It's a really great value add. Imagine if you could buy a duplex where the numbers are kind of tight, allowed to add an ADU in the back. And also there are special ADU builders that maybe even have their own financing sometimes. So it's a whole new world. It can seriously 10x the property. But you don't need to tell the listing agent that, because they don't need to know how much value you guys, your buyer can bring to that property. So don't let them know that. But yeah, that's just a great value add. And you're going to probably be asked about ADUs. So you want to know what the rule is there. Rent rate value add. So talking about value adds, this is another thing, like starting to think about properties in ways of opportunity and what value could be added. Like sometimes a crappy deal could actually be a really phenomenal deal if you look at it a little differently. So rent rate, a lot of the properties that I'm seeing right now are severely undervalued on their rent. Again, mum's the word. Don't tell the listing agent that. But and you really want to buy based upon their current rent. They don't need to earn off of your, potential rent. And so anyway, a lot of them are pricing them with the opportunity, but quite frankly, you should get the deal based upon what they're currently getting. They don't, but you could be thinking in your mind, oh my gosh, like, don't just take the rent that they're getting as gospel. Like definitely check and do your own homework and see what you think they really should be getting. And then your numbers could be pretty phenomenal for your client. So that's something to just keep in mind. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it on education. Any questions about education? Okay. So, let's see where. Okay. So investor specific questions. So I do have a Tiffany, should I just share the link in the chat here for my investor buyer questions?
Yes, please. If you can. If it gives you challenges, you can send it to me. I'll do it, but it should allow you to.
Yeah.
And then after you were able to drop that, Delania threw a question into the chat.
Okay.
She said, where do you find properties other than the MLS?
Yeah, this is a tough question. I feel like I get this question a lot. I don't feel like there's any really magic sauce to this. I mean, MLS is still a great place for properties. There's plenty of properties that are being overlooked. Now, I don't just look in my backyard. Believe me, I would not have any business. Where I live is really not the greatest investment opportunity. So I do go. I mean, my geography is pretty wide, but remember, you usually, especially if they're tenant occupied, you're not seeing the property until it's under contract. So it's not like you're driving all around going to see properties, if that makes sense. So it's really not as much like legwork as you might think. And I'll pay other people to go video properties for me. So, I try not to drive more than an hour if I can help it. I'll go to a closing but I'll pay somebody to go to the inspection. I'll pay somebody to go to the, do a walkthrough. But a lot of times your clients really don't care if you don't go to the inspection either. It's a different type of client. They're used to a different, it's not as, I don't know, it's just different. The expectations are a little different. Things are moving a lot quicker and they know that you can't be everywhere. So, but where do you find properties? I'm also looking at 5+ units. So I do go to like LoopNut. I ask realtors so if I find a property that looks good, I always ask the agent, do you have any others? Does this buyer or does this seller want to sell any others in his portfolio? So those are some ways to kind of find things that might not be on the MLS. But yeah, that's my answer there. Sorry, it's not. I wish I had some cool ideas for you.
Thank you. And then Henry said, is Facebook Marketplace a good resource for off markets?
I don't know. I really haven't used it. I've looked on Craigslist though lately. I have been looking on Craigslist. Mostly wholesaler stuff. And I either don't get a response or it's just I don't know. I'm just not a fan, guys. Sorry.
It's okay. And then TJ, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you do focus-wise multifamily investment properties or single family homes? Do you have a percentile differentials?
I mean, it just depends on their goals. If their goal is, I personally prefer multifamily because I'm obsessed, like I'm all about cash flow. So they cash flow better, hands down. Unless the house has maybe a unit in the basement. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of rentals out there that are not abiding by the law. Yeah, because anyway, but that's fine, whatever. It's all about their goals. Like, so that's part of the investor questionnaire that I just dropped in the chat. You just really want to dig in to find out what is are they after cash flow? Do they want to appreciate? Because some people, cash flow is literally $1. Like that's what I've had several people like, it just has to cash flow $1. And so, okay. It's not my investment property, it's theirs. And that's what they want. So, I have one client right now that they just want a really nice house. They don't even care if it cash flows. Actually, they want it to at least zero out. They want it to cover their mortgage, which I don't call that cash flowing because you have a ton of other expenses involved. So, but they're just buying so that his wife can practice being a landlord. So she doesn't want difficult tenants. They want to kind of turn. So, everybody has different goals in mind. But if they want aggressive cash flow, they got to go short-term rental or multifamily for sure. 10 to 12% ROI is actually a pretty healthy number. It's hard to get 10 to 12% ROI nowadays, quite frankly. But I don't look at ROI as much personally. I look at cash flow. Are FSBOs a good place to look? I don't know. Maybe. I feel like all the FSBOs they're wanting way too much. I don't know about you guys. They don't know how to price stuff. Also, usually multifamily are not going to be FSBO. That would be weird. Do you require your investment clients to sign buyer agreements? Yes, in Georgia you have to, it's the law, but they sign non-exclusives because I want to have flexibility to be able to tee it up and bring other agents in and refer it out. And I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of special stipulations. So it's a lot easier for me to do non-exclusive, especially if they're working and if we're looking all over the state. So yeah, you guys definitely use my investor questionnaire, make it your own. If you guys want to ask me about that offline, I don't want to go too deep into that, but investor specific items to ask for on an offer. Yeah, so that's another thing. There are, this one's pretty important. So when you are in an offer situation, and probably even before you get under contract, there's some things you want to ask for. Some things, let me get in my notes. Maybe I can drop this in there too. So some things might be, hey, are all the tenants up to date on their rent? That's a pretty important one. Honestly, I would ask that before even getting under contract. Your client needs to know if they're facing a potential eviction situation because evictions are expensive. I spent $4 grand on an eviction last year, and not to mention just a whole lot of drama and headache and lost revenue. So evictions are, but at the same time, an eviction can be a great bargaining maneuver. Hey, we could be facing an eviction. So do you want us to take that off your hands? If so, it might cost us $5 grand and lost revenue. So you might want to drop your price by 10. So anyway, you can think about it like that. Because that might be why they're selling. They literally might be selling because they don't want to deal with an eviction. So it might be a good bargaining maneuver. So yeah, you definitely want to know if the rent is up to date. You want to ask them, how much do you think this place needs to bring it up to, standard? Just to get an idea, so your client can crunch some numbers on his or her own. Oh gosh, I can't find that darn thing. Sorry, I do have a list somewhere, but I'm blanking on where it is. Okay, I'll just go off my head. Some other things to ask for. This is an important one. So you want rent roll. They need to be able to provide a rent ledger so that you can see what rent they're actually getting. And then in a really important one that will really impress your clients that nobody knows about if you don't work with investors is an estoppel certificate. Estoppel certificate is, and trust me, the listing agent probably won't know what this is either. So you're going to have to send them a template for them to use. You should be able to find one for your state specifically, but basically what that is it's a form that the tenant actually fills out that, and they sign it, that basically they're saying like, yes, X, Y, and Z is true. Okay, yes, you know, I pay this much rent. Yes, this is my lease term. So if you have that in writing, it really helps to protect your client. Because I have personally been in a situation where the lease that I was given, it was not true. I mean, like, it was probably just made up lease, and it did not jive with what the tenants were actually paying. It did not jive. So I learned my lesson the hard way. So you want to get an estoppel certificate. You also want to get lease agreements. I think those are the main three. Yeah.
Hey, Holly, would you go to the tenant directly for that estoppel certificate, or would you go through the seller's agent and say, hey, we need to get this?
You go through the agent.
Okay.
But I actually put it in my contract to get those things within, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever you think. I also would not do any 5-day inspection periods. At least 7, preferably 10, because I got in a situation recently where it was totally my screw up. And I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I did not notice that their counter offer dropped the 7 days to 5. And I felt awful. I tried to pay for the inspection, but my client wouldn't let me, but it really was not enough time. It was not a really ideal situation, because especially if there's multi-units and the place needs a lot of love, like, that's just not enough time. I mean, your client needs to be able to probably go put eyes on it or have somebody video it first before they pay for an inspection. I mean, that's an ideal situation. So anyway, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole on that, but I would definitely try to get a little bit longer inspection period. But yeah, rent roll, estoppel certificate, lease agreements, ask them how much they think the property needs, what major issues there are, just try to get the whole, what the clients are, why they're selling, that can help just understand the motivation, how motivated they might be. And then let's see, questions to ask listing agent. Yeah, I remember that. Current rent versus market rent. I already touched on that. Showings are only doing, yeah. So sometimes you can show it beforehand, especially if it's unoccupied, of course. But if it's occupied, they may want you to wait till due diligence. So in that case, you just got to prep your clients. I mean, if they're seasoned investors, they're going to know about that. But if they're a newbie, they're not going to understand that. Like, they're going to be scared. They are really going to be scared. And you got to just talk them off the ledge and just explain to them, like, this is the way it's done. There are tenants, and the list and the seller is not going to allow us to look at it until we're in due diligence. Let them know that this is super standard. It's nothing to be afraid of. All it takes is we go check it out. And if there's too much and you change your mind, we pull out during due diligence. It's not a big deal. It happens. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the contract. Any investor will tell you. I mean, you go into contract. It's no big deal. It's scary at first, but it's not that scary actually once you do it. Showing, okay, rehab estimates. Yeah, so another thing, I mean, you'll just start to figure like what rehab kind of costs. You'll just start to like calculate in your head, kitchen, bathrooms, roof, siding, blah, blah, blah. You'll just kind of start to get your own, but don't try to resist the urge to make those numbers for your clients. Let them tell you what they think it's going to cost. And then if they ask you for your opinion, you give it, or if they ask you agree with that, you can validate it, or you can disagree with it. But I have to hold myself back a lot too, because it's not my wallet that I'm buying out of, it's theirs, and it's their experience, that they have their own experience. So definitely let them try to put their own numbers together and be there as a support for that. Because if you get your numbers wrong and they're relying completely on you for the numbers, guess what? they're going to be pissed off at you when those numbers aren't true. So let them know, hey, it's always an estimate. Best, it's all estimates. There are no guarantees. Landlord paying for the utilities. That's an important one. You got to ask that. Is a landlord paying for any utilities? If so, get estimates. And if the landlord is paying for utilities, get utility bill. You get a utility bill. Okay. Also find out if they are if the utilities are separate. If they're not separate, sometimes it can be usually if they're not separate, that's when the landlord is paying for them to make it easier. But what I've done in the past is even if I pay for them, I just find out what that dollar amount is and I divvy it up between the houses and I increase the rent by that amount. Just so you know. Zoning, you want to find out about zoning. Again, a lot of people are doing things that are not legal. It happens all the time. They don't know, they don't understand the zoning, and sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness. I get that. But find out about zoning. Find out what's allowed, what's not allowed. If they're running a short-term rental and they're selling it as a short-term rental, but guess what? The business license doesn't transfer when you buy it and you have to apply again and it's a special use permit and you're in a situation where your client just bought a property that they thought they could use as a short-term rental and now they can't, they're going to be pissed. And then last but not least, are tenants current on rent or I already been over that, the injection. That's all I had, guys. So hit me with any more questions or comments or let's just freestyle talk. Oh, here's some questions here. Let me see. Sold a house that the seller did not have a rent roll nor any lease documentation. So I advised my client to request that the current tenant sign a new lease agreement if they wanted them to stay. This worked out, as well as a 10-day inspection with the additional 5 days for repairs. Good. Awesome. Do your investors request a copy of the formal rental agreements or require proof of formal notification of lease terminations? That's a copy of the formal rent agreements. You mean the lease agreements, right? Yeah, we do get copies of those. Proof of formal notification of lease terminations. No, I haven't gotten that, but we haven't really terminated a lease. We did have a situation where we wanted them to go month to month because they were so undervalued on the rent. We definitely didn't want to be stuck with them for another year. And I do think I put that in the contract that they needed to be put on month to month. So maybe that was in the estoppel, but that's not a bad idea, a formal notification of lease terminations if you want the lease terminated. How do you handle Section 8 leases? I don't know. I haven't done one. I have not done a Section 8.
Holly, I can help with that Section 8 question.
Okay, cool.
I'm actually working with Section 8 right now. The landlord is doing the majority of the heavy lifting on this project, but certain things need to be done by the agent if you are representing the tenant. If you are not, it's strictly done with the landlord, who will contact Department of Social Services or whoever else is necessary to send paperwork that gets you government assistance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any leases. Like maybe that question is pertaining to the transition of the purchase. I don't know if I would really get involved in that. I mean, I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, the government pays you for sure. You get your money. There's if you can provide adequate comps and the voucher is substantial for that zip code, because that's how they do it. Section 8 leases are done by zip code. Then you can claim market value and they'll pay you. Now, Section 8 is supposed to be renter assistance. It's not supposed to be rent. And a lot of people take advantage of that. And they say, well, they're only giving me $1,600, so I can only get $1,600. And then a lot of landlords don't like Section 8 because of that specific reason, because the client doesn't put any ownership into the rent. So it does tend to cause some problems in a lot of landlords. I find a lot of my clients that are investors don't like Section 8 for that reason.
Yeah, I've noticed too, sometimes the Section 8 rent is is above market, and then other times it's below. So
yeah, right now I just went through it with the landlord, who's a friend of mine who's the investor, and she did. We ran comps for the neighborhood. We ran comps for specific comps for the property. They have to be specific. You can't make adjustments. If you have to make adjustments, they're not going to give you the value you're looking for. And that was told to us by the woman at the office. So we were like, oh, all right. So we were looking for specific, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom homes in that, 5-mile radius. Once you can provide that information on rentals, it has nothing to do with sales. It's all about closed rentals. And if you can provide that the rent in that market is that price, they may give you more.
That's cool.
But again, if the landlord will accept more, that's it. It's all investor preference and how much money you're actually putting into the project and how much money you're going to have to put in after the project. Because if you do tend to rent, you also run into issues with people don't care about your stuff. They only care about their stuff. So, and that's the connotation with Section 8. So I've seen a lot of my investors turn away from them.
So someone asked a question here, RK, for the Georgia contract, does the contract list if the tenant is supposed to vacate prior to close? No. What is the expected status of the property at close? Vacant? No, not necessarily. No. I mean, there's nothing, I think you just have to put a special stip. I don't think there's anything specific to that in that verbiage. And our lease agreements in Georgia, mine anyway that I use, there's lots of different lease agreements. The one I used, I did have verbiage in there that basically stated if we sell, we have X number of days. I think it was like 60 days, just to notify them we can get out of the lease. I don't know if that's the same in every state, but in Georgia you can. You're allowed to break the lease if you want to sell your house. But no, I think that's just something you'd have to put in the special steps. If you wanted them to request for them to vacate, you could ask for that. But they're usually not going to want to do that because, quite frankly, it puts them in a vulnerable situation. Because what if it doesn't close? Now they've told their clients that they need to leave. It gets a little hairy, Something else I learned: if you have a property that has renter in it and you have an accepted offer, let's say there are major plumbing issues. If you call a plumbing contractor until it's closed, they will not come out and give you a quote. Best thing is to place service call instead of requesting a quote. This happened to me that I did work out. Just food for thought. Henry, what do you mean by that? Why wouldn't the plumber come out and quote?
Well, I was working on the property and, we worked everything out. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we worked everything out and it was just a crazy situation. It's one of those properties where it had been updated, beautiful. Okay. When we were doing the home inspection, we noticed that the toilet would not flush. When it did flush, the water went into the bathtub. And if you drain the water out of the bathtub, it went to the main drain of the kitchen sink. Oh. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's like, like musical faucets here. So, and so we had to get, a plumber out there to give us a quote, what it was going to cost to actually fix it. Well, a lot of the, plumbing companies in this area, that's like, if you don't own the property, we're not allowed to come and give you a quote to actually repair it. And there were a few of them, but they were like crazy expensive. And so what we did was, we found some plumbers that say, we got a major, plumbing issue. We're closing on the house. So we made a typical service call. They came out, said, this is my recommendation. Let me send someone else out to actually give you a quote. And so we still had the tenant in there. And this was the property that did not have a rent roll, no lease documentation whatsoever. And this client was paying month to month. She wanted to stay, but she wanted the plumbing fixed because the previous seller would not fix anything. Okay. So after we closed, we actually fixed it. But that was the experience that most plumbing companies, until you actually have, accepted offer, well, not accepted offer, but you have actually closed on the property, you own it, they won't do anything because they said they could be liable. But basically, they feel that, you know, these deals fall apart all the time. And if they send someone else out there to spend a couple of hours to figure out what's going on, what it's going to cost, if the deal falls through, they're not making any money. So that's why they don't do it. So if you get in that situation, what I've learned is just make a, you know, simple service call.
Well, that's a good tip. That must be a location-based thing, because I know it's pretty common to get, you know, plumbing inspections done and scopes and things like that. I know Alana, who's on here, was, I think she was telling me that if she's working with an older house, she always recommends getting the plumbing scoped, I think, because it can be such a costly endeavor. That's interesting, though. That's a good tip. Okay, I want to know what happened when you turned on the outside faucet. Henry, what happened when you turned on the outside faucet?
The outside faucet was fine, but there were a few, you know, just a few issues. And the main issue was this was an older house, was built like in the early 60s, and it did not have like a clean out. Okay. So it was a simple fix. But yeah, when you looked in there, you'd never seen anything like it. But the outside faucets were fine.
Thanks for sharing that, Henry. I just thought of one other thing, guys, that I didn't really discuss that I think is worth mentioning. So when it comes to my lead conversion, so I hear a lot of other people, even in the bigger pockets, you know, realtor community, saying that their lead conversion is kind of crappy. And I have a theory that it's not so much that the leads themselves are crappy, it's actually the realtor process that might be a little bit crappy. So, and I'm not saying I have, you know, perfected it by any means, but one thing that I do is I always have a 30-minute, and I try not to go over that 30-minute cutoff, virtual meeting, a video call. I use Google Meet, but that's just because I think Zoom's probably better, but I've just been lazy and it's connected to my Gmail, so that's what I use. But I really encourage you to set that up, schedule them, have the virtual call, go through the investor questionnaire that I shared or create your own. And then after that, you have homework, they have homework, and I don't do anything for them. I will not put them on a search. I will not go view a property unless they sign an agreement. So that's like step 2. They have to, I'll send them my preferred lender list. That's it. I won't do anything else. It's amazing what she goes through and how she digs her motivation goals timeline. Oh, Tiffany's saying that. Yeah, I hopped on a call with Tiffany just to kind of show her how I run the meeting.
Yeah, I panicked. I was like, Holly, I've got a lead. He's an investor. I don't know what to do. I need your help. And she was a rock star.
I mean, here's the thing, like, yeah, you will get a lot of people with super unrealistic expectations that are sometimes pretty comical, but yeah, you don't want to be running around getting used and abused, but there's some certain, and I use KV Core, like I grade them, they have stars, you know, when we have completed the meeting, maybe they have 2 stars. When they sign the agreement, they have, well, when they sign the agreement, to me, they are a client, but actually they probably get 4 stars. And then when they're fully pre-approved, when I know they have financing, like proof of funds, pre-approval, then they're 5 stars. They have pre-approval, their timeline is 1 to 3 months, and they've signed my agreement, it's go time. Like they're getting my attention. If they don't have those things, like, sorry, I mean, you can call me when, you know, you're ready to get serious. And I'll put a reminder to call them and check on them and things like that. But my 5-star clients are the ones I give attention. And if I don't have the bandwidth, I know that, I can feel that you know, then I will refer. I'll refer as much as I can. How do you deal with an accepted, Henry asks, how do you deal with an accepted property and they now want to assign it prior to closing? Can you explain what you mean by that? Assign it prior to closing. What does that mean?
Yeah, so you've got a client, you got an accepted offer, and for whatever reason, they decide they want to assign it basically to another buyer to make a little extra money, okay? Personally, I think it's kind of shady, but it happens, okay? Well, yeah, this could be like the buyer, okay? So the buyer has purchased the property. They're scheduled for closing, it's accepted, but then they decide they want to, they're looking for other buyers on the market or investor buyers, and they'll sign it to them to actually buy it. And then come closing day, they show up, okay, and they've already sold the property to someone else. Yeah. Have you ever dealt with that?
I mean, that literally sounds like what wholesalers do. Am I missing?
It is. And sometimes the home seller will agree to it just to get it sold. Yeah. But sometimes, yeah, it is more wholesaling. But when you've got an accepted offer and they decide, well, I want to assign it to someone else, and again, the wholesaler make more money, how actually do you deal with that, or have you ever experienced that?
I mean, I haven't, because like I said, I'm not a fan of wholesalers. I've tried to figure out how to work with them. I feel like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. I don't like the model personally. I just don't. I know there's plenty of people that disagree with me and love it. So I don't want to bash the whole idea, but I'm not a fan. So I don't work with them. And if they did that, like to me, and they weren't upfront about what their plan was, I'm never going to work with you again. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, it was just a question.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, question for you. Wouldn't that be on the purchase contract as far as disclosure? Wouldn't all parties be cognizant of that in advance? As far as assignment?
No, I don't really statistics of that, honestly. That's over my pay grade. I guess I'll learn it if it ever happens to me.
Oh, if you don't mind, I'll step in. Henry, yeah. your question that you had is pretty tricky. Be careful. First, make sure your contract says there it's assignable. Second, you need a third party title company who are aware of this, that you're doing this beforehand, because it's very difficult to switch title work, title insurance overnight, because it still has to go through underwriting, even if it's cash buyers. So very tricky. In the booming days in the 2004, 5, 6, everybody did that. Everything was assignable. Everybody bought a property for $1 million, went and put it on the market, flipped it for 1.2 to a $200,000 money at closing. But you have to make sure that the step-by-step process is very synchronized, or it could just fall up and blow up in your face. And if you're not aware and the seller's not aware what they're doing, it could be a liability issue on you as an agent.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions, guys, before we just kind of, I mean, we're open. So any other questions, though, for me regarding anything like marketing, bigger pockets, short-term rentals, like whatever you want to ask me. It could be about your own personal investing as well.
I'll jump in and just say, great job, Holly. I've been working with some investors for quite a few months. We were under contract earlier this year and it fell out, and they came into town over last weekend and we went out and looked at more properties and everything. So we're on track now to get under contract again, hopefully. If not, we're going to look at lots that already have utilities ran. But everything that you said is right on point. It's not, like you said, an emotional sell, like some of the residences I've worked with. So it's a lot easier because they are all about the numbers. And here they're about the topography. How many lots can they yield?
Yeah, and for you, Deborah, I mean, gosh, you're in such a gold mine for short-term rentals. But like I saw that you had some land experience. I mean, that's a great niche. That's a great niche. Like that's something you can really dive into as far as being an expert in land. Like not every realtor understands land. There's a whole bunch of different things to test for, to ask for, that I have no idea about. That's a whole nother world too. But, one thing that's really hot that I would encourage you, and maybe you already are, but, glamping is such a popular topic. So understanding which what's unrestricted, where the zoning allows for glamping would be actually probably a campground situation. So where it might be allowable for campgrounds. And so understanding that, and any like local vendors that actually maybe build tiny house ADU situations for, like, the really popular thing right now is those little tiny A-frames. And then you have, there's no bathroom. It's like a cluster of little A-frames. And then you might build like an outdoor outhouse basically in the middle of X. So understanding some of those, because man, there's a lot of money out there that wants to pour into glamping right now.
Very true. We have a new treehouse development in Gatlinburg, and the investors I'm working with are going to be using CMOD containers to build container cabins. And I've also talked to another group that's looking at building the clear domes, which is pretty cool, but that's actually one of the most restricted things in our area is like mobile homes and RVs, glamping. Even with these container homes, they're going to have someone sign off every time a hole is cut through it, whether it's for wiring, plumbing, or whatever. So there is a lot of restrictions, and it's definitely here knowing the difference between, like you say, the zonings, because we have R1 and R2. R1 is great for residential, and in one city of my county, I can use R1 for overnight rental as well as long-term or permanent residence. But in like Pigeon Forge, it has to be R2 to do overnight rental. Can't be in R1. Sevierville, right next to it, same county, we can do R1. So I do recommend knowing all of your zones and stuff like that as well.
That's awesome. Vicky asks, hello, Holly, if you invest yourself, how much cash flow you like to have? Do you have $1 million cash flow? I want as much cash flow as I can squeeze out of it. Do you have a calculator you can share? I use a Bigger Pockets calculator. Or any calculator or Excel sheet you can share. Oh, I hate Excel. I use Google all the time. I suck at Excel. Can you share to calculate investment property? Thanks. Yeah, I just use Bigger Pockets. They have a great calculator. It's super user friendly. It's awesome. As far as cash flow, for me personally, when I was looking at long-term rental, I always wanted $200 a door per month. That's net. That's after everything and anything you can imagine, even potential. You know, I would stick in like 5% capex or 6% capex, 5% maintenance, utilities, etc. And I still wanted to cash flow minimum $200 a month per door, not per property, per door. And then now though, with short-term rentals, I want to cash flow like 3 times that, 4 times that. I mean, now I'm cash flowing. I mean, I'll just tell you, I'll be full disclosure here. Like our Hot Springs, Arkansas duplex, we bought for $70,000. We put in probably 30 to 40,000. I try not to look because it makes me sick. Double what I thought. And it took me a year to do it, by the way. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic of conversation. So let's say I'm in at 110 and on a $50,000, or less mortgage. My mortgage is peanuts, which is almost kind of funny that we were able to finance so low. Anyway, yeah, it's very, very inexpensive mortgage. And it's a duplex. We're cash flowing net on that short-term rental. I'm talking after everything, consumables, maintenance, housekeeping, like everything I could think of to put in there, even my automation that I'm using, everything. We're cash flowing roughly $2,000 to $2,200 a month net on let's say with my rehab $110,000 purchase. That's like probably, it's 3 to 4 times what I would have cash flowed long-term rental. But I do self-manage. I self-manage. So if you outsource your management, that's 25% right there taken off the top. So it becomes not as desirable of a proposition. You're welcome. Thanks for the question. Anybody out there have some cool stories about Tiffany? If you're talking, you're on a mute.
No, I was talking to the child that's hiding under my desk.
Oh, you were trying to.
But I wanted to thank you for your time. This has been amazing. You guys, honestly, it is my bad. I I should have gotten this information to you last week, truly. And Holly knows, because we wanted to have Holly last week. And then when the guys came back from build, we needed to get that information to you. But this has just been amazing. And I'm really thankful that we were able to reschedule everything. So thank you, Holly, for being flexible in your schedule. Thank your husband for watching the littles for us so that you could pour into our businesses. I appreciate you so much.
Hey, I'll go as long as you guys want, because right now he's out there with them and I'm just chilling in here. I'm happy as I can.
Go ahead. I'll stop the recording and everything.